The Final Four is tonight, and to get us ready, the next T. Baker is here to chat about the Final Four matchups, the keys to victory for each team, players to watch, what they're most excited to see at the Final Four, and more. Locked On Women's Basketball starts now.
Ogunbowale for the win.
You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball.
Hello and happy Friday. You are locked on to women's basketball. I'm Natalie Heavren, and I'm a features writer and the Atlantic 10 beat reporter for The Next. Thanks for making Locked On Women's Basketball your first listen every day. And remember, Locked On Women's Basketball is free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. If this is your first time listening to Locked On Women's Basketball, welcome. We at The Next have over 100 reported pieces every single month. We have a beat reporter on every single WNBA team, one on more than 15 different NCAA beats, so get that YouTube subscription up. And you can also support us by subscribing to The Next for $9 a month, $72 a year at thenexthoops.com. Today we'll be talking all about the Final Four, including the matchups, the keys to victory for each team, and what we're excited to see. Joining me today is The Next Big East writer, T. Baker. First, let's talk about our first Final Four matchup. South Carolina is taking on NC State, and if our listeners missed a slew of stories from you, you were in Albany last weekend. What did you see from South Carolina, and how did they make the Final Four?
Well, thanks for having me today, Natalie. Very excited for this upcoming weekend. South Carolina just did what they've done all season. They just have depth that I don't think another team in this tournament can match. It was just like a rotating door of post players: Camila Cardoso, Ashlyn Watkins, Chloe Kitts. When Cardoso got into some foul trouble, no problem, just subbing some other bigs. And I think the difference with South Carolina this year is their perimeter shooting, their guard play. I think that was their weakness last year. Everyone kind of saw that on display in their defeat against Iowa in the Final Four last year. But this year, bringing in Tahina Paopao from the transfer portal, Raven Johnson has improved shooting. Guard Bree Hall is incredibly consistent. And then you have freshmen in Malaysia Fawiley and Tess Johnson, who are just starters in and of themselves on a lot of other programs. So it's really just the way that South Carolina can wear you down. And I think the other side is the coaching, right? Dawn Staley has created a program there that has just a different standard of excellence. And, when they were down at various moments in that game and things were looking kind of tough towards the end, Dawn Staley didn't at all look worried. She looked like her team was going to win. And in the post game, their sophomore guard, Raven Johnson, said, if Dawn isn't sweating, we're not sweating, so she's ready. They are in a place where they are the most dominant program in women's college basketball, and until they get beat, they're unbeaten. So just the same thing that we've seen from South Carolina all year, which is just dominance and strong play all around the court, guard and post play.
And then on the other side of the country, NC State took down Stanford and Texas last weekend to punch their ticket to the Final Four, in part behind 10 total threes from Isaiah James over those two games. What have you seen from the Wolfpack in the tournament so far that's gotten them to the Final Four?
Well, I've just seen a hard-nosed team that's well coached. One of my few accurate predictions in this year's bracket was I did select the Wolfpack to go to the Final Four. I just saw something in them throughout the regular season. They had really impressive non-conference wins against Yukon and Colorado this season. So that they compete against Sweet 16 caliber talent. They placed second place in a really competitive ACC. And I just think that they have a really talented roster, are coached well. They have a lot of belief in themselves right now. And it's a really important milestone for this program. This is their second overall Final Four and their first since 1998. So they're really riding a wave of momentum right now. And, they could be really disruptive in this Final Four.
And what intrigues you about this matchup?
So I am looking forward to Sanaya Rivers returning to play against her former team. In the transfer portal era, one of the exciting things that I think can happen is just teams playing against their former teams. Sanaya Rivers won a national title with South Carolina just a few years ago in 2022. She left for North Carolina State looking to get, I think, a bit more playing time to kind of be the go-to player. And she is one of those go-to players on NC State. But to see her come back and compete for a space in the national title game against the team that she formerly won a national title game with. These are two schools from the Carolinas. I'm just very excited for that matchup. And looking forward to seeing if Sanaya Rivers can kind of play spoiler to her former program.
And South Carolina has had a couple of scares towards the end of the season. What do you think they need to do to advance to the national championship game and maybe even go undefeated and win another championship?
I think that they just have to stick to their identity. They are a program that, like I said, has incredible depth, just has the ability to beat you in so many different ways. I think that, in the SEC title game against the the semifinal game against the Vols, they had a really close matchup. Both of their matchups in the regionals in Albany were close, and they pulled them out in the end, but there were some scares there. They really had to figure out how to pull it out in the end. But like I said, Dawn Staley, her coaching staff, they keep this team grounded. And I think the reality about South Carolina, we forget that they're a young team because they've just been so dominant all season. They don't have the team they had last year, which was seniors who were WNBA caliber, who had been there before. And we know that they tripped up in the semifinals last year. So it'll be interesting to see, can they get over that hump this year, make it back to the title game. But I think they just need to remain locked in, that the young team that they have needs to just stay focused till the very end. I think sometimes it looks like with this team, they can just kind of lose focus and let the other team go on a run. So when you're at this point in the season, you just can't have that. You have to play really tight. You have to make sure that there's very little margin for error. So I think they just have to step up and erase some of those mistakes that they kind of surface in the second half and just finish out the game strong.
And on the flip side, what does NC State need to do to defeat South Carolina?
It's hard to say. They have to have a really great game all around. They have to be able to lock down South Carolina's really aggressive post play. They have to be able to match them and get stops, but also deliver on the offensive end. I think that the reason South Carolina is so strong is because if they're not playing great in the post that day, they just shoot it out to their perimeter players who can make threes and who can really take the game away in a hurry. So I think they just have to be able to shut down one of those threats, whether it's the post play or the 3-point play. South Carolina did not have their best 3-point shooting game in their last matchup. So, I think that if they're able to disrupt some of the shooting, if they're able to find a way to make stops, that's the way they're going to win, because no one's been able to do it so far this year. Teams have gotten close, but there has to be a full 40 minutes of consistent play, shutting down what South Carolina has, shutting down the variety of things they'll throw at you. So it'll be a tough matchup. In my bracket, I did not have them defeating South Carolina. I had South Carolina defeating them in the Final Four. So looking forward to seeing what plays out at this time of year. Anything can happen. So looking forward to that.
Very true, and we'll have to see if that bracket magic continues or if you're proven wrong. Coming up next, we'll get into the matchup between Iowa and UConn. Today's episode is brought to you by Robinhood. Did you know that even if you have a 401k for retirement, you can still have an IRA Robinhood has the only IRA that gives you a 3% boost on every dollar you contribute when you subscribe to Robinhood Gold. But get this, now through April 30th, Robinhood is even boosting every single dollar you transfer in from other retirement accounts with a 3% match. That's right, no cap on the 3% match. Robinhood Gold gets you the most for your retirement thanks to their IRA with a 3% match. This offer is good through April 30th. Get started at robinhood.com/boost. Subscription fees apply. And now for some legal info. Claim as of Q1 2024, validated by Radius Global Market Research. Investing involves risk, including loss. Limitations apply to IRAs and 401ks. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold for 1 year from the date of first 3% match. Must keep Robinhood IRA for 5 years. The 3% matching on transfers is subject to specific terms and conditions. Robinhood IRA available to U.S. customers in good standing. Robinhood Financial LLC, member SIPC, is a registered broker-dealer. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news. Streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. So now onto our second Final Four matchup, Iowa and UConn. We've talked about UConn a lot this season on the podcast, so let's start off with Iowa. Was this your first time seeing Iowa in person, and what stood out to you?
It was, and Caitlin Clark stood out to me. It was incredible to watch her play in person. There's a lot of hype around Caitlin Clark this season for understandable reasons. And when I was sitting there in person watching her, I understood the hype because she just moves at a different pace than everyone else on the court. It almost looks like things are in slow motion for her. And she's able to just kind of accelerate her play. She's able to do so much on the court. She had 7 3-pointers, and, several of them were in succession in the third quarter. 7 at least. I think it was 7 or 9 3-pointers. I can't even keep track because it was just one after the other. And it was really impressive to see her play. But I think the thing about her that makes her so impressive is her ability to make her teammates better as well. We talk about how she's a great shooter, but she's a great passer. She instills confidence in her teammates. I think that there's just an elevated level of play when she's on the court, and to see it all together, Kate Martin is a great shooter. Hannah Stuelke in the post. There's just other weapons on the team that when everyone's attention is focused on Caitlin Clark, you can overlook it. But there's a strong roster here. Gabby Marshall played a full 40 minutes of defense, and doesn't get that credit at the end because everyone wants to talk to Caitlin. But it's not just watching Caitlin and the incredible things she can do on the court, but it's the way she elevates her teammates and the way they're ready to step up when their number's called to contribute to really an offensive firehouse in the Iowa Hawkeyes.
Yeah, and Caitlin had 9 3-pointers on Monday night. She went 9 of 20, which, is sometimes what you see. Not all teams can shoot that well, but, you sometimes see teams take 20 3-pointers. So just seeing that. And then, how did UConn with 7 healthy players make it to the Final Four?
It was a lot of belief. It was a lot of really great coaching. Chris Daly, Gina Oriema, Tanya Cardosa, Jamel Elliott, Morgan Valley. These are all coaches who have been doing this for a long time, have a lot of experience together, and know how to make the right adjustments. I think that UConn has a particular style of basketball that has just been consistently excellent for going on 3 decades now. And that system lends itself to really great play no matter who's on the court. And we know that UConn's always played a pretty tight rotation. Gina Oriema rarely goes beyond 7 or 8 players in the rotation, especially this time of year. So I think the difference between this year and last year in terms of the injury pieces is that we knew pretty early on that the injuries were season ending. And so we weren't expecting, let's say, AZ Fudd to work back into the rotation or, Caroline Ducharme to work back in the rotation. We knew they were out. And so I think earlier in the season, UConn was able to say, this is our team. We got to make it work. We're not waiting for anyone else. Look around. This is who's going to win us games. I think that the other piece is Paige Bueckers. She's never played in an NCAA tournament that hasn't ended in the Final Four. She is that good. She's able to do so much on the court. She's a gifted scorer, an efficient scorer. She's a great rebounder, great passer. She comes up with some big steals and big blocks when they need them. She plays bigger than her size, and she really can do everything on the court. So when she's playing well, when she's making her shots, which is most of the time, it instills confidence in the younger players on the team, right? So the freshman Ashlyn Shade, KK Arnold, they've been able to step up with that confidence. And then you have another All-American forward in Aaliyah Edwards. So the talent is there. It may be a lot of it sitting on the bench, but a lot of it's on the court too. And I think UConn's just figured out a way to make that rotation work, to get the best out of each of those players. And that's what the UConn program's been doing for decades now.
And who else besides Caitlin Clark for Iowa and Paige Bueckers, who, as you mentioned, has been absolutely phenomenal in the NCAA tournament so far, for UConn, need to step up and be impactful?
So I think that for UConn, really the X factor for me is Ice Brady. She's a freshman, technically a redshirt freshman, but she struggled all season to really make an impact. But during the Big East tournament, when Aaliyah Edwards went out with a broken nose, it was Ice Brady who stepped in, and she was named to the all-tournament team. She just figured out a way to step up in the moment, and they need that from her. They need her to be able to put up at least some points, to make defensive stops, to put up productive minutes, both when she's on the court with Edwards and when she's on the court without Edwards, and to be that, post presence to compete against really Iowa's rotation of post players that can come in and make a difference when you're thinking about Hannah Stuelke, Addison O'Grady. These are just some players that are able to contribute in the post for Iowa. And I think for Iowa, their X factor is Sydney Falter. She really had some great minutes throughout the regionals. She made the first team as well, the all-tournament team. We know what we can expect from Caitlin Clark, from Kate Martin, from Gabby Marshall, these players who have done it for a while, for Iowa. But really, it's those players who can step up in big moments and push the team over the edge, like Sydney Falter, that I think can make all the difference in this time of year.
And going back to UConn, what makes this UConn team different from previous UConn teams that you've covered?
Well, I've been covering UConn for 3 years, and all 3 of those years, they've been absolutely devastated by injury. So I'm wondering if I'm the one who needs to be saged out of the locker room. But the difference this year is that there is I think, belief that that they can win the national championship. I think that last year, they were really hobbling at this time of year. Post game after the Syracuse matchup in the second round, Coach Auriemma said, last year I knew we kind of ran out of steam at this point. This year there's a different mentality. So I think, you have seniors in Nika Mule, who has been just, when she's staying on the court and not getting in foul trouble, she's been an incredible defender. She's been a consistent, steady presence at the guard position for UConn. You have Aaliyah Edwards, who's a WNBA caliber talent, an Olympian. Paige Bueckers, that senior core has done this before. They've been to Final Fours. They've been to the national championship game. And when you have Paige Bueckers on the court playing like she is, she was player of the year her freshman season, but she's strengthened her body. She's gotten more consistent. She can do more on the court. She is a gifted player. She's a special player. And when you have her on the court playing the way she is alongside that leadership and two really talented freshmen, I think anything's possible. So, it'll be a tough matchup against Iowa. I think it'll be a close game. And, it'll come down to who makes shots and to, who's able to pull it out in the end. But I think it's going to be a tight matchup. And the fact that UConn is here and that they've made it to the Final Four is impressive in and of itself. And let's see if they can make a run.
Coming up next, we'll finish talking about the matchup between Iowa and UConn and also talk about what we're excited to see in Cleveland and more. Today's episode is brought to you by Fire TV. I love Fire TV because it has so many ways to watch sports, from live baseball and March Madness to highlights and in-depth analysis. Fire TV offers amazing viewing experiences with smart TVs, as well as the Fire TV stick that you can plug into your existing TV that provides access to millions of movies and TV episodes, as well as free and live TV. Fire TV recently created Fire TV channels to deliver a constant supply of the latest videos from your favorite sports brands, all for free. That includes all of us at Locked On and most of the big pro leagues and college conferences as well. Fire TV channels lets you dive into all of the game analysis, highlights, and more to keep up to date on all the latest in the world of sports, March Madness, NBA, MLB, and lots more. Not to mention great news, entertainment, gaming, travel, cooking videos as well. Check out Fire TV channels on Fire TV and Alexa devices. If you haven't checked out Fire TV channels, you should. Trust me on this. To learn more, visit www.amazon.com/lockedonfiretv. Today's episode is brought to you by Nissan. Are you the kind of driver that likes to push things a little further? Ever wonder what adventure could be around the next corner? Our friends at Nissan have a lineup of SUVs with the capabilities to take your adventure to the next level. The 2024 Nissan Rogue is perfect for city drives and great escapes. Class exclusive Google built-in is your always updating assistant to call on for almost anything. Gone are the days of connecting your phone. Google Assistant, Google Maps, and Google Play Store are built right into the 12.3-inch HD touchscreen infotainment system. The 2024 Rogue is the perfect midsize crossover for your next adventure. Nissan's incredible lineup also includes the 2024 Nissan Pathfinder. It has room for up to 8 and expansive cargo capacity and advanced available 4x4 capability. With 284 horsepower and up to 6,000 pounds towing, when adventure calls, the Pathfinder is there to answer. Take the Nissan Rogue, Nissan Pathfinder, or Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. So, T, what are you most excited to see in this matchup?
So out of this matchup, I am excited to see how UConn, if at all, has a matchup for Caitlin Clark. Gina Oriema post-game after the Elite Eight win said there's really not much you can do to stop Caitlin Clark, but Nika Mule as guard, as the defender that she is, has shut down a lot of really talented players in her time at UConn. I think that her really Achilles heel has been foul trouble. If she's able to stay out of foul trouble, if she's able to really keep things difficult for Caitlin Clark, I think this team goes as Caitlin goes. If she's having an off shooting night, it can throw them off. It can throw them out of sync. So I'm excited to see that guard matchup. I'm also excited to see how UConn's freshmen show up. The stakes are really high. They've been able to kind of withstand that pressure to really play beyond their ages all season long. But this is when the lights are brightest. How will they show up in this matchup and, hit shots for UConn to be able to have a chance to win?
Yeah, the Huskies got into some serious foul trouble in their Elite Eight matchup. But it'll be interesting to see, can they stay out of it? When it mattered most, I think Nika Mule ended the game 13 minutes without picking up her fifth foul, and that was really key for them. I was also interested to see who will be guarding Caitlin Clark, so just really excited to see that and how it all plays out. What are the keys to victory for Iowa and then also UConn as well?
I think really at this time of year, it comes down to the little things, who is making their free throws, who is staying out of foul trouble, How are teams responding when the other team goes on a big run? We know that everyone is talented that's here. We know that these teams are here for a reason. And so I think it really is going to come down to those little moments and coaching adjustments that are made. If Caitlin Clark really is lighting up UConn, how are they able to shut down the rest of the cast so they can really have a chance at beating a really talented Hawkeyes team? So I think it's the little things. It's about how teams are able to hold the mentality of I'm gonna make it to this national championship game. Both teams have a lot on the line in terms of players they're gonna lose. If no matter what, Caitlin Clark's gonna play her last college basketball game this weekend. No matter what, Aaliyah Edwards is gonna be playing her last college basketball. So is Nika Mule. So how do you manage the emotion of all that, and how do you show up and perform in the 40 minutes on the court that you have?
I hadn't even thought about that so far. So just, I hope you're excited to see those last college games and be one of the lucky few in the arena for that. What are you most excited for at the Final Four since you'll be there?
Well, I'm just excited for the level of attention and excitement that's surrounding this Final Four. I've been a fan for 2 decades now. I've seen the tournament when it's had a lot of eyes on it. I've seen it when it's had less eyes on it. There's a little bit something different about this year. Being at that LSU Iowa game, there was just this national championship type environment. And we know that, over 12 million people watched that game. Tickets are a hot item in this Cleveland Final Four because everyone wants to see the talent on the court. So I'm just excited to see players who are, at the top of their craft, the most elite in the sport, go at it in front of really engaged crowds, both in person and on TV, and to see who's able to win in the end. I think that's what's really drawn fans in, is the talent. And it'll be really exciting to just see how it all plays out. There's a lot of other events around the Final Four this weekend. I'll be covering the All-Star game on Saturday, which is the first time I can ever remember there being a college All-Star game. So I know it's something that's either new or come back. But really excited to just see those players who are finishing up their college careers, headed off to the WNBA or wherever they're headed next, to have one last chance to compete. And I think that'll be a fun matchup to just witness as part of the Final Four festivities.
Yeah, and for you and any of our listeners that might be in Cleveland this weekend, make sure you pack earplugs. I was at the Final Four last year, and those really came in clutch. Just so many enthusiastic fans for women's basketball. Was super excited to see. I'll be staying home, so I'm just excited to see what photos and stories come out of this weekend from the talented group at the Next. Really excited for 2 great games to set up an inevitably incredible one on Sunday. So just can't wait to see what all comes out of it from the Next hoops and on the court as well. Thank you for joining me today, T. Where can the listeners find you online?
Thank you for having me. Looking forward to it. Can't wait to be with our team in Cleveland. I can be found at T Baker. So it's TEE Baker _WBB, like women's basketball. So T Baker _WBB. And I'll be posting some photos from the weekend, some videos. So be sure to follow for all my adventures in Cleveland.
Thanks so much for making Locked On Women's Basketball your first listen every day. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. And make sure to tune in tomorrow to hear more from our amazing WNBA draft crew. Who knows, there might be some emergency podcast featuring Howard Megdal. Just make sure to tune in to see what our crew in Cleveland comes up with.